How is it possible to be a millionaire but be too broke to hire a lawyer? It sounds like a riddle, doesn't it? Well, today we're jumping into a real-life, high-stakes divorce that puts that exact paradox front and center. It raises this huge question: what does a fair fight really look like when one person is holding all the cards and all the cash? Let's get into it.
So, the stage for all this drama. A marital asset pool worth a jaw-dropping 50 million Australian dollars. I mean, this isn't your average divorce. This is about dividing an entire empire that was built over a lifetime. You'd think with that much money on the table, it'd be a battle of equals. But you'd be wrong.
And this right here is the absolute heart of the problem. Okay, so technically they're both multimillionaires, but look at how it's broken down. The wife has control over about 35 million, and most of it is liquid. You know, cash, stuff she can access immediately. The husband, on the other hand, has his 15 million, but it's all tied up in things he can't easily sell. And this massive imbalance of power is where our story really kicks off.
Which brings us right to our first section, the millionaire's poverty dilemma. Yeah, it sounds crazy. We're going to dig into how someone with a $15 million net worth could find himself, for all intents and purposes, too broke to even fight back. Okay, so here's the official case file. Kerr and Christie, heard in the Family Court of Australia. We're talking about a marriage that lasted 24 years and created just an immense amount of wealth. But the immediate fight wasn't about the final 50-50 split. No, it was about two really specific things: a critical tax ruling and, way more urgently for the husband, just getting some money to pay his lawyers. So you're probably wondering, what were these $15 million in assets the husband had? Well, they weren't sitting in stocks or bank accounts. They were mostly drought-stricken farms and properties. Think about that. These weren't just hard to sell. They were actually a financial black hole, needing constant money just to keep them afloat. He was the literal definition of asset-rich, but cash-poor.
And if that wasn't bad enough, on top of having zero cash flow, he was already carrying almost $2.7 million in debt. With his business getting hammered by the drought and all his assets leveraged up to the hilt, just waltzing into a bank and asking for another loan? Yeah, that was not going to happen. He was completely and utterly trapped.
So this financial trap he was in, it set the stage for something much bigger. This became what you can only call a war of control. It stopped being just about the money and started being about who had the resources, who had the power to dictate how this whole fight was going to go down. And the whole conflict really boiled down to two very clear demands. On one side, you have the wife. She's acting like a smart manager, saying, hey, we have to get an official tax ruling on this major asset. Without that, we don't even know what it's truly worth. Fair enough. On the other side, the husband's plea was way more desperate. He was saying, I just need $200,000 from you to stay in the game and pay my legal team. Now, the wife's position, you have to admit, on the surface, it sounds perfectly logical. She basically argued, look, he's a grown man with $15 million in assets. He should solve his own cash flow problems. Sell something. It's not my job to fund his legal battle against me. And you can see her point, right? But the husband, he saw it in a totally different light. For him, this wasn't about getting a handout. He argued that because she controlled all the cash, it created this massive, unfair power imbalance. Without any funds, he couldn't get a good lawyer, which meant she could pretty much steamroll him. His request, he said, was just about making it a level playing field. So, there you have it. Two sides with completely opposite positions, but both kind of sound reasonable, don't they? The stage was set for an epic courtroom showdown, and the whole thing landed on the desk of a single judge who had to figure a way through this financial and ethical mess. And this just lays out the judge's impossible choice perfectly. Option 1. Tell the husband to sell his farms, his entire livelihood, probably at a huge loss, just to pay his lawyers. Or option 2. Order the wife to write a $200,000 check to the man she's fighting in court, basically forcing her to pay for her own opposition. I mean, neither one feels quite right, does it? Seriously, just take a second and think about it. What would you do? Is it the court's job to bail out a millionaire who has a cash flow problem? Or is it the court's job to make sure that one person's massive financial power doesn't just completely crush the other person before the fight has even really started?
All right, so this brings us to the moment of truth. The judge, Justice Altobelli, didn't just make a call here. He delivered a really powerful statement about what fairness and power actually mean in family law.
And here are the judge's own words. This is so important. He said that forcing the husband to sell his assets would be tantamount to an abuse of the power that the wife had, simply because she controlled all the cash. He saw that her financial advantage was so huge, it created a fight that was unfair from the get-go, and he decided the court could not let that stand.
So the final ruling was actually incredibly smart and practical. Here's what he did. Step 1. The wife was ordered to pay the husband the $200,000 he needed. Boom, the playing field is now level. Step 2. He ordered them both into a conciliation conference, giving them a real shot to settle things now that they were on more equal footing. And only then, if that failed, would the husband have to apply for that tax ruling the wife wanted. It was a brilliant solution that addressed everyone's needs, but in the right order.
And this whole decision really hinged on a core idea in family law: creating a level playing field. It's his recognition that you can't have real justice if one person can afford a team of legals and the other person can barely get a lawyer to answer the phone. The court has the power and, frankly, the duty to step in and fix that kind of imbalance. So what can the rest of us actually learn from this wild case? Because it's not just a story about super rich people. There are some really powerful lessons in here for anybody who might find themselves in a major dispute. Okay, first and foremost, cash is king. It's not about your total net worth. It's about what you can get your hands on when you need it. In a crisis, liquid cash gives you power and options that paper wealth just can't. Second, justice requires resources. The courts get it. They know a fair fight is usually an equally funded fight, and they will step in. And third, and this is a big one, challenge unfairness early. This case wasn't won in the final round. It was won in the opening bell. Securing the money to fight is a huge victory in itself, because it stops you from being backed into a corner and forced to take a bad deal out of sheer desperation. And that really leaves us with this final massive question. This case gave us one answer, but it's a question we're always struggling with as a society. When the scales of wealth are tipped so heavily to one side, what does it really take to balance the scales of justice for everyone?